Okay, we are live.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Delegate Pam Queen and with my co-chair, Delegate McKay, to talk about the Economic Stability Work Group. It's been a while since we have had a chance to talk, so we thought it was good to convene and talk about what we want to focus on for 2022, which is the last time we met was about September 30th of 2020 to talk about legislative priorities for 2021, but we didn't follow, we didn't have any specific ones. So just want to say hi and welcome back to everyone. Good seeing you. Hopefully everything is going well. And maybe we'll go around and just have everybody say hi, and then we'll talk about legislative priorities. Delegate McKay.
Thank you, Co-Chair Queen. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking the time. I'm coming to you live in the heart of District 1C, the district that I represent. This is Green Ridge State Forest, so it's a place that we as legislators fund, and just thought it'd be a nice backdrop for me. But looking forward to hearing what those have to do and talk about economic stability. So thank you, Delegate Queen.
Okay, do you want to go around robin and then we'll talk about the agenda? Delegate Valentina Smith.
So thank you, both chairs, both lovely backgrounds. I'm choosing the blurred version today. I appreciate the work and the ability to be able to work with you on this committee. It allows me to dovetail with the work that we're doing on it, which I think is why I ended up here, is so that we can dovetail with Joint Committee on Ending Homelessness. I'm the co-chair of that with Mary Washington. And then I sit on second generation poverty. And so the work that we're doing there. And then I'm vice chair of HHS and the budgets that deal with a lot of the vulnerable and working. So I really relish the opportunity to work in this subcommittee too, to kind of bring that level of legislative participation to the work that we're going to do. And as I said, we're just came out of the appropriations meeting. So we're working with Secretary Brinkley on this SNAP situation, which obviously has a lot to do with economic stability and why the department didn't apply for continued emergency SNAP in October, and trying to make sure they apply for November and December. And then also trying to make sure that the federal money, or how it's being spent for temporary cash assistance, and asking them to kind of mirror the same thing for TDAP, but they'd have to use state money, but under the same policy that will treat the recipients the same. So I know we talked a lot about those issues last year within this committee, and it's just terrific to have this committee helping to drive these issues with the House, with the other committees. So thank you.
Delegate Bridges didn't hear me. Delegate, did you hear me? Delegate Bridges. There you go.
I am so sorry. My connection is.
That's fine. You don't have to say anything. I didn't know if you wanted to say anything at all. Don't have to. I think I lost them totally. Delegate Juanita Fisher.
Hello, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair, my soror chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Delegate Juanita Fisher. I represent District 47B in Prince George's County, the best county. I would say I'm very excited for us to sort of reconvene. I'm a lot blonder than the last time we met, but a lot has gone on, especially in my community. As you know, I represent a large immigrant and Latino population, some would say in the whole state. And my particular zip code of 20783 has been the largest COVID contraction zip code in the entire state as well. So I'm very excited for the work that we're going to do in this group to continue all the great bills that we've championed our last session. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Delegate Harrison.
Hi, good afternoon. Andrea Harrison, representing the 24th Legislative District.
in the central part of Prince George's County, and dare I say in the central part of Maryland. I think that this is timely, considering all that we have seen and we've gone through and our constituents have gone through over this past year. And so I'm just looking forward to the discussion and seeing what we may be able to do to help all of our constituents and the residents of Maryland. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. If others come on, and we did have some more RSVPs, we'll introduce them when they come. So I want to give some background, especially for those who, it's been a while since we talked where we are with things, and then we can kind of talk about, next steps. So in the 2020 session, we were able to pass the bill to establish the 2-gen commission. And that's been up, and we'll talk a little bit about that. That's been going forward. We also had put in legislation we were supporting to look at child care support that sort of mirrored the Federal Working Families Act, which basically, if you're making, if child care costs are more than 10% of your income, then there would be some sort of schedule to provide you with some support or some type of subsidy to help with that. So that was something we had a hearing for. It was supported by the speaker, but that did not pass that year. The next year in 2021, we met around this time, and the focus was on we had gotten a report from United Way, the Alice report, and talking about the benefits cliff. And that was a lot of what Delegate Valentino Smith was talking about, how we can make sure that families, as they transition off of benefits, don't go into this benefit, off into this cliff where they are still finding themselves in having issues with poverty or not maintaining their economic stability. So we didn't have any legislation that we championed from this committee, but we supported other works that were being done by other committees, homelessness and other committees throughout the House. So this year, I guess the question is, where do we want to put our focus, especially now that we've seen a lot of issues related to COVID that has really, again, uncovered the economic stability, the instability of many Marylanders. Do we want to do more with 2-gen? It doesn't have to be an or, but the 2-gen commission is putting out a report that may come later this month. I don't know if it will have any sort of legislative actions, but I did attend a couple of meetings. They talked about some of the pilot that they have and work that's being done in various counties. So I don't know if there'll be some effort to standardize that across all the counties. So that could be one thing. And also level of funding, if that would be needed for the commission, that could be another area. The items around childcare, if that is something we still want to look at as relates to that was another issue we saw there was an impact during COVID, either childcare centers closing or not having the money to fund families to find childcare, and the cost of childcare being very high part of their income. So that's another issue. Or do we want to look at more of the benefits cliff items that we kind of talked about last year around this time? So that's kind of where I wanted to start us with, but there could be other issues too that we want to focus on. But I think it would be important, especially as we come out of COVID, that we have some legislation that really looks to how are we going to try to help families recover. I think that this will be the time for us to make sure that we focus on those issues. But any other comments, or Delegate McKay?
Yeah.
Well, if I may, very shortly, Chair Queen, I think the child care legislation that we had put in last year. Needs to be a priority of ours going forward. The devastation of COVID and that kind of stuff has just exasperated that. And that would be my first 2 cents. While we're not making decisions today, I would just like us to maybe focus on putting that piece of legislation in again. Thank you.
I'm sorry, thank you. Delegate Valentino Smith, were you trying to say something? I'm sorry.
Thank you. I think I agree with Delegate McKay and having this committee push on that, I think will be extraordinarily helpful. I look to this committee to help as we prioritize the work of the different committees in the House. And so I will bring to you what the Joint Committee on Ending Homelessness is doing too, because I think Chair Queen and Chair McKay, last year we talked about almost double filing those pieces of legislation under requests by both committees. And I think we did it once successfully on one of the bills. I have to go back and look when we drafted it. So I think Delegate McKay is on that committee, and having this committee also conclude that it's a priority and filing with some of the, not all of them, but obviously some of them will be helpful. I will be bringing forth a bill. I just met with Labor. I've been working on it for 3 years, but COVID kind of took it off the front rails for a little while. I passed House Bill 1313 a couple years ago that changed the sanctions for people so that they wouldn't be heavily sanctioned and lose their benefits for not making it to their work site. Obviously if their car broke down or they didn't have childcare, then they started losing their temporary cash assistance, SNAP, they couldn't get back on it. So we changed the whole sanctioning bill. But workforce is not really, I don't think, working that well. And I think it's one of the most important things now post-pandemic. And we have money flowing through DHS and TCA and TANF requirements for work and labor. And we have a lot of money that we use in WIOLA and in the EARN program, which is state money, to try and do workforce preparation in these 13 workforce sites. And so I spent a lot of time with labor this morning. And I think it would, in terms of economic security, if we need to better align our workforce priorities to make sure that the money is being spent on the population that most needs it to exit poverty, which are those people that are on SNAP and TCA. And labor candidly admits that it's not focused there right now, sometimes as a priority, because these local agencies get measured on their success rate. And guess what? You have a higher success rate when you work with a population that's not poor. And so anyway, I would look forward to bringing that piece of legislation to this group and having you all work to help it make it a better piece too, and be part of thinking it's a priority for us to present to the House for economic stability on workforce. And the Cliff, the report is coming out on 2nd Gen. And thank you, Delegate Queen, for attending the meetings. I'm one of the commissioners. And the original draft report didn't have any language in it about that issue. And I asked in the second draft that comes out that it specifically include information about benefits and inadequacy of benefits in the Cliff. So we're still waiting to see if the second report will address that or not. But I did ask them to amend it. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Harrison.
Thank you. I certainly agree with making sure that we're doing everything that we can for families with children, but I wanted to highlight something that came to my attention during this pandemic, and that is those individuals who may be single, not necessarily having children attached to them or anyone else, who perhaps are gig workers, or those who may be in areas of hospitality, where what I found, along with all of the other tragic stories that we were hearing, were those individuals who were not necessarily able to get, well, first of all, they were having a hard time getting the unemployment. And then, their industry had not started to recover when the benefits were cut. And so basically we're ending up with another set of individuals who are being thrust into a level of poverty that I guess no one would have expected or no one would necessarily think about because they don't have children and they don't have perhaps a spouse, but they're solely reliant on themselves. They may be contract workers or gig workers, and they're just or in those industries that we found were suddenly hard hit. And I just want to highlight that so that as we're going forward, we continue to remember those individuals as well and figure out what and or if we could do to try and make sure that everyone is or that no one is thrust into poverty or to more poverty than what they already are. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very, very good insights, important points to address. Delegate Juanita Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to, I agree with all the comments made by colleagues. I think I still feel that housing is going to be a huge issue. You can't do anything if housing isn't set, right, and moving yourself. So, we had a lot of different legislation that came through both chambers. The only one that made it was right to counsel that still is having funding that needs funding done and hopefully released from our governor. So I would like to have us address, there's the eviction piece, right, out of COVID, and then there's the affordable housing piece and like where we go long term. So I think it's sort of those two pockets of like dealing with folks that may or may not be in an eviction or debt situation. And then I can't speak, I wouldn't say it's like for all, well, housing is still expensive. I remember Delegate McKay commenting in one of our in-person groups of, sometimes we think it's only like maybe the more urban counties, but housing is expensive in almost every county in Maryland. And so I guess I think as a state, just being in my community the other day, if any of you know the Hyattsville area that borders DC, voters are like, I can afford to move into Hyattsville right now. It's just becoming really, really an issue. So I think we just have to think about eviction and then long term, what does affordable housing look like in Maryland and what are we going to do about it? And I think when it comes to, and I guess I would ask Chair McKay and you, Chair Queen, and when you look at the affordable housing piece, are we only here, is this group solely focused on Marylanders that are below or around the poverty line? Or are we also focused on those that are just touching maybe the middle class, where housing will really make or break their outcome? Do you know what I mean? So there's that too. Of people that are just going to touch that middle class. Housing may put them over the edge of being able to be in the middle class or working middle class, or staying just above poverty line. So those are my comments.
Very good comments. What I want to just mention in terms of I guess our target or our scope of individuals. I'm thinking, the whole overall focus of the economic stability work group is to move people from poverty over that line and keep sustained. So it's that transition from poverty to, we want to get them to a middle class status. And so what is the trajectory? What are the things they need to get them there to stay there? So I think we should be focused on both. I'm assuming, but I don't know if anyone else has a comments on that.
Well, when Speaker Bush originally had created the Economic Stability Work Group, it was yes, correct, to get people off of the greatest thing that the United States ever had is our safety net, but also to prevent those from slipping back into the safety net. And that speaks exactly to Delegate Fisher's point that housing is really a break point where people will, in droves, drop back, for lack of better words. So I think we do have a mandate, and I believe that the speaker, Adrian Jones, has pushed that forward as well, that we need to make sure that as many Marylanders don't fall into the safety net, and make sure as many Marylanders get off the safety net into the middle class. And whatever we can do here is paramount to do those two missions.
Okay, so just maybe so I can summarize, I think one of the things we want to do is to make sure when we think of legislation going forward, is it fitting within our, in some of the, focus areas that we've mentioned. So what I've heard, and I want to make sure I captured what I've heard. So we want to look at issues around childcare, legislative actions around that, the idea of homelessness, and I think I'm a group evictions with that, homelessness and evictions. Then from a housing standpoint, affordable housing, getting folks, I guess, from, would that be the same? He's getting them from renters to homeowners. Could we classify it that way, or what do you think on that? And I'm looking at Fisher and maybe Valentino Smith, who talk about these sort of issues more often. Would that be a reasonable classification?
Yeah, so on Joint Committee on Ending Homelessness, actually just before the speaker died, I had been in his office talking to him about the idea of combining these two committees, because there's so much dovetail between what we're trying to do, which is end homelessness or help people that are on the verge of losing their homes, and all of those issues cross over to economic stability. So I think that it is the Joint Committee on Ending Homelessness kind of narrowing in on things that the other committees, we're trying not to take over the work of other committees, which in environmental or ENT, Chairman Barbay's committee seems to really be the focus point for evictions and rentals. And so we were trying to step aside and do things that you think the other standing committees aren't focused on, or you can bring to their attention. So I think in terms of housing, why don't I send you, some of our agendas, and you have a chance to look at that, because we're always talking about affordable housing. There's another work group that I think is really important. Jeremy Baker just texted me this morning. They're going to get it going, that the Joint Committee on Ending Homelessness set up last year as priority legislation, which is adaptive reuse. So I think for Delegate Fisher, when she was talking about inventory and is there affordable inventory for people, there's going to be so much vacant commercial space, probably because of the pandemic and the way businesses are going to probably rethink about how they run with being on site, that we be the first in the nation or be way out there looking at the adaptive reuse of existing vacant space instead of trying to get people to build new affordable space. And so there's a work group that's going to start on that, Chair Queen and Chair McKay. So I think there'll be some overlap with that group. So it's hard, as you said, to figure out where other standing committees are already working and other joint committees are working, how we come in and help support the notion that they're priorities to the speaker and to the House, but then kind of create our own unique perspective in the time that we have outside of session. So I don't know if I answered the question. I guess what I would say is to try not to dovetail in with what we know the standing committees are doing, and think about it sometimes just as small as saying we need to figure out how people can get access to a car. People can't stay at work and can't maintain their mortgages, when I'm finding out from labor, because labor can offer them training, and Senator Rosapep's pushing apprenticeships, but they can't drive transportation. That may be what we're looking at. Just where can we meet families like second generous with what they need? I see that as kind of our committee's focus. So, thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think it's a way we could probably do that and not step on toes of other committees. But the other area I wanted to make sure that we don't forget is I think there's still some efforts we can do around the United Way Alice report that gets to benefits as well as the support systems that folks need. I think that can tie into some of the second generation work. And I believe Alice has some, while they focus on people with children, I do think they have some components that look at those without children. I think they do. Is that correct, Delegate McKay?
That is correct, Delegate Queen. It does take the all of their statistics take into the consideration those single with children, or those together with children. So yes, ma'am.
So I think that could touch on some of the things that Delegate Harrison was mentioning. But to go back to what you were saying, Delegate Valentino Smith, I think the way we can look at the combining with other committees is kind of what you alluded to, that I think we kind of did before, where we could be we can be co-sponsors as a committee with that legislation that may come out of the homeless committee, or we could be co-sponsors of legislation that may come out of those other committees. So we can help, build support that way, versus us, sponsoring any of those. We would be co-sponsors to that. But I just wanted us to maybe think about what are the areas we want to keep our eyes and ears open as we hear about legislation related to that. Because I still don't want us to forget about second generation and what that report has. There could be actions coming out of that. So I just wanted to kind of say, are we okay with these being the categories of things that we might look at as legislation comes forward, either as a primary sponsor of or a co-sponsor in collaboration with other committees? Could that work?
I definitely believe it can work, and I would be in consensus with that as a framework as we go forward.
Any other thoughts? And Delegate Harrison, is that a hand raised from before, or is that new?
Thank you. No, that was new. And I just wanted to, I guess, again, dovetail on the homelessness and those individuals who are right at that line of, going from the poverty level to just crossing the line. And those are the individuals that, if they lose their job, they lose their income, then they're, right back in homelessness. Or in poverty, and which very well could lead to homelessness because they can't pay their rent. And without an address, you can't get benefits. So it's kind of like an unfortunate life circle. You have to have all of these things working together. And I would also just say that there are a lot of seniors who fall in that category too. And when I say seniors, I mean individuals over the age of 60 who actually are still working, that, if they lose their income, then they fall right back into poverty as well. So, I think Delegate McKay mentioned, in the Alice report, it looks at all of those individuals, individuals with children, without children, singles. And I guess we just have to really think about seniors as well. So, yes, I look forward to whatever legislation comes out of the various committees, and, what we may come up with to present, just trying to do everything we can to make sure that our residents, our constituents, have a quality of life. And that's really what this is about. Thank you.
No, thank you. That was very helpful. Anyone else have any comments? So let me want to suggest that this makes sense as a way of looking at things, next steps. So the 2Gen report, and I know Delegate Valentino Smith, you serve on with that commission. If we can, when that comes out, if we can look at any recommendations from that and bring it back to the, bring it back to this working group to see if there are legislative actions that we might want to champion as one action. Two, I think we can go back and revisit the childcare legislation we had a couple years ago and revisit that and look at that. So look at that legislation. Number three, from the Homeless Commission, your work group, if there are any items that come out of that that you would want to have us look at to see if we could be co-sponsors of or to support that effort. So touching base with the homeless working group. And then it might be worthwhile, because it's been a while since we've reached out to them, is to touch base with United Way. And is there anything, have they looked at, the issue of Alice families post-COVID to see if there's some updates from there that we might want to tackle? How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Sounds great. The president of United Way of the National Capital Area, Rosie Allen Herring, is just very active in the central part of the state and the DMV area, and so she would be a great person to speak with as well on that.
Any other thoughts? Anyone else?
Sorry, it's Delegate Valentina. I was trying to find. You think I'd know how to do this by now? Delegate Harrison just made reference to United Way, and we heard United Way presentations in Joint Committee on Ending Homelessness. And I've been talking to the advocates about another piece of legislation we're going to do, but it just crossed my mind. I'm going to do this piece of legislation. All of these people, be it a senior, be it a single person without children, or being at the complex challenged family, the position is that they need case managers. And United Way did a pilot program that they presented to us where they case managed people and they were able to stay in their home much longer. And so I'm thinking, Chair Queen and Chair McKay, I've got a pilot study from Arizona that I'm working on, a piece of legislation that has to do with case management for people to stay in community colleges for their workforce requirement, and then they get case managed, make sure their childcare and their home and everything is being, that they're doing everything. But it may be a broader issue for us as policymakers in this committee. Why are these families on the verge? And there's so many resources out there, right? We've got grants, we've got not-for-profits, we've got 3 different agencies touching them at one time, and they're not getting to the resources. That's what I was telling Labor this morning. How does anybody wake up and know they're supposed to go to a workforce site and there are 13 of them? And so maybe this committee starts to take on why the system isn't helping families as much, and case management. When Delegate Harrison said United Way, maybe we could have United Way come talk to us. They talked to Joint Committee on Ending Homelessness on how successful case management is. Just a thought.
No, I think that's very helpful. I was wondering, and then that's why I'm really looking to see this 2Gen report comes out. Did the 2Gen report talk about navigators or case managers? Because that seems to be one of the things we kind of hear when it comes to
Right.
things. People just don't know where to go. They don't know how to navigate the system. So was that not covered there, or should it be something where we have maybe 2Gen and United Way all in the same room?
So, honestly, 2Gen has been talking since I've been on it about this philosophy for how you manage families and this lens that you use with families and taking them where they are and individualizing their needs. So it kind of circles around the concept of case management, but it doesn't directly refer to it in the report. It allows the policy that you manage. So it kind of infers case management. And other parts of our state, DHS, DMH, Medicaid, and then housing, all talk about shifting money down to the locals for all of the money that we're talking about, and the people that are on the verge of poverty or in poverty are accessing programs through the counties, not the state. The counties and the state is a pass through. and sends the money down in housing and DHS. And now I'm finding out in workforce. And so we have all these different counties and they're passed through, and some are case managing and some aren't. Maybe this committee could spend another meeting or something really looking at how the system's working as a whole. Like, we're picking individual things like childcare, and I think that's good, but I think maybe we look at as a whole how it's delivering services and make some recommendations or policy broadly along that way, which would be case management and outcomes, looking at, is anyone following outcomes? We're sticking them in a job, but are they really keeping it, and how long are they keeping it for? We're getting them transitional housing, but are they really then, being able to get stable housing? So anyway, I know I'm all over the place because I sit on too many committees, but as soon as it would be great to have this committee sponsor what Second Gen ends up doing. I'm waiting for the draft report because they can't sponsor legislation. So we'll keep working. I think
No, again, I guess getting your point, that's why I'm trying to wait to see what they say so that we can do the legislative action. But that's why I was questioning, had that concept of case management come from them? Because if not, then that's something we can help to try to fill the gaps. But I was just hoping that maybe.
Yeah, theirs is a philosophy, and my case management is a bill modeled after a couple of other states for workforce, but I think it probably should be broader than that.
No, that makes sense. I got you.
Well, the pilot program of 2Gen in Garrett County, while a smaller population, it did that in that it was case managers. It was based upon allowing everyone to know all the services and then actually start tracking some of it. So, that's a smaller swath, and it may have been more manageable to do that. But we may want to look at Garrett County and how they were able to do that in their whole pilot program.
Yeah, I would mention that when I was sitting in on the meeting and listening to their presentation, I was extremely impressed with what they've done. The way they bring things together, they look at outcomes, they use data to drive the things they're doing. So it seemed to be a good model. I just, again, I'm waiting to see what the report says to get a sense of how the commission has looked at that in connection to what other counties are doing. So
well, they actually, Madam Chair, did an outreach at the fairgrounds and was trying to help people navigate and know all the different services. So the 2Gen was being talked about at the county fair, which I think was an outside of the box way of trying to reach people.
Okay, makes really good sense. So going forward for us, what would you like to do? Would we like to have a presentation from Garrett County on 2Gen? Would we like to have a presentation from United Way, a more updated presentation? What do you think would help us best to try to bring this together and to get get some legislative actions for next steps? Thoughts on that?
Well, why don't we hold off on the Garrett County presentation on 2Gen, because we're going to see what the report's going to say. But definitely the County United Way coming in and giving us a report, I think would be beneficial.
There's another report that's extremely helpful that sometimes appropriations takes a briefing on, but we haven't been lately. So maybe this committee can. It's called Life After Welfare. And they do an incredible job of describing for us how people are doing when they leave the system, and the unfortunate part is how fast they return to the system and some of the reasons. So maybe I can work, if you want, to help us get a presentation on Life After Welfare report.
Do you also, that sounds good. Do you know when the 2Gen report is coming out, Delegate Valentina Smith?
No, I promise after this, Delegate, I'll look at my calendar to see when the next meeting is and when it's happening.
Delegate Harrison?
Thank you. Actually, that was going to be my question, if we knew when that report would come, because when it's available, then I think it would be great to have a presentation on it, to go through it. But on the United Way piece, I think that it would be beneficial if we're going to do United Way presentation. I think we should have the I guess from the different regions that we all support. Like we have the Western Maryland, I'm not sure the name of that particular group, but then, in the Washington metropolitan area, because we are so fluid here, people, flowing in and out, and, we have a lot of transition from the district into the counties, right, surrounding the districts, Prince George's, Montgomery. There's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of transition back and forth. And so to have the United Way from the metropolitan area along with United Way from the other areas, if we can all have them to come in so that we can get a good comprehensive look at the state and what they're seeing, and and based on that, we may be able to come up with some legislative action as well, or some policies that we can suggest.
Yep, sounds good. Anyone else on potential groups we might want to talk to or hear from? So what I have so far in terms of groups, the United Way from all the regions, getting some update on, the OWLS report or what they found post-COVID, Life After Welfare. Is that a group, Delegate Valentino Smith, or a nonprofit?
It's an annual report. I love the report. I read it every year. It comes out every year, I think, and it's done by University of Maryland social work.
University of Maryland, okay.
Department, and a couple, and I think, it's so bad. I got them in my office, but I'm at home, obviously. But
no problem. I didn't want to know who it was.
I'm texting someone right now to figure out who we get the briefing from.
Okay, no.
But it does have to do with the social work program at University of Maryland. Got
you. And then the 2Gen report, once it comes out, to maybe have a summary or recap of that. So is the thought that these are 3 separate sessions?
Well, I guess it would depend on when that 2G report is available. I think that the United Way discussion should be one, but with the Life After Welfare and the 2G, I guess it just depends on timing.
Yeah, why don't we try to put both of those together, 2Gen and Life After Welfare? And if the timing doesn't work, we may have to have a third meeting.
Okay, sounds good. Now, again, thinking of our schedules, what are we looking at to have something in October?
By the end of the week. No, I'm just kidding. Definitely in October, maybe the second week of October, and then maybe the 4th week of October.
Okay. How does that sound for others?
I mean, it all depends on getting those people if they're available. So.
Okay. But the idea that both would be in October is what we were trying to target.
I think that's because of the holidays coming up and a rumor of a possible session. So we kind of need to get some of that stuff in under our belt, for lack of better words. We're going to run out of days.
Understood. Any other comments, folks, as we try to pursue that and get that scheduled?
Yeah, Madam Chair. Oh, sorry, my camera. Madam Chair, I also wanted to maybe invite the Public Justice Center to talk about some housing stuff and like what direction we could take with that. And I can send you that contact in the chat.
And Delegate Fisher, are you asking that they would be part of this second group, Life After Welfare by the University of Maryland 2 Gen Report Recap, or should we try to do a third session?
I'm not trying to give people multiple sessions, so I guess wherever you think they could fit in. I'm not as familiar. I would lean on you and Delegate Valentino Smith. I'm not as familiar with like 2 Gen and how that like all works. So maybe you feel like the speakers you have will cover housing enough. But I think Public Justice Center has done like a lot, and I can kind of give you, I can like offline just email you some housing advocates and just
I think
figure
they're
out.
coming. I'm sorry. I think they're coming to Joint Committee on Ending Homelessness to brief. Let me check on that, Dr. Fisher.
Okay, yeah, I don't want to be repetitive to anyone, and I'm not sure who has, I think we all really discussed the heart of the housing issue. And to be honest, I don't know where the light is. Like, I don't know who's the right person to direct both. So
There's no right person. It's all of us.
Yeah, so it's a little complicated, but I just wanted to make sure there was like something. So up to you, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair.
So my only question might be if they're already coming to the session on homeless, could we be invited to that?
Sure. Why don't I do that?
I think we know a person might get an invitation for that. Yeah.
Delegate McKay is on it, and we know Delegate Queen comes in on all things.
I just come to anybody's session, so I just
right. She pops in. So I'll send the agenda. I love having as many people. I sometimes self-invite delegates to Joint Committee on Ending Homelessness, because I know we just had Delegate Lewis in because we were talking about eviction, and we wouldn't dare talk about eviction without Robin. So I will send you our agenda and bring you in. Delegate McKay's on the committee. That would be very good, I think.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome instead. And then just for you, Delegate Valentino Smith and Delegate McKay and maybe Delegate Queen, I also would love if this group, because it's not a specific bill and it's like an idea, whether it's like inviting, I think the private sector in housing, right? Whether it's like certain developers or AOBA or whatever, to have the conversation of like, housing's really expensive. What are you guys willing to do to make something affordable for our people? And, we already went over it, that people in that sandwich middle, because I feel like what happens is we come up with ideas, even individually in committees and groups like this, nothing said, then we get to session and they're mad. And it's just like a race to the clock to figure out something they can agree with and be okay with. And I just kind of want to hear their ideas, because this is like a problem. It's unaffordable. And there's only so many rich DC couples that are going to move into Maryland. Like eventually that will stop. And, where are we going? So I would just love to invite the private sector somehow, and just, they know it's an issue. They know they're preparing for session. Just like, I was just so sad, all the housing that just feels like kind of died, other than Right to Counsel, which is still not fully funded. And so it's just kind of like, if they had an idea on how we can help create, like the way we have those senior buildings, right, that they get the tax credit. And so the senior building apartments stay at a certain amount of money. Like, what can we do? Just like, what are their ideas? I would love to like have that conversation with them, and support them, right? We want them to do well, but we need Marylanders to do well too. So it's not like a adversarial thing, just more like, let's get some ideas, because this is like a huge problem thing. So maybe you guys can invite them.
Who? Homeless or us? I think that's a good idea to bring them to the table, because you're right, you can't get bills passed unless we try.
Yeah, I don't know what you and Delegate McKay think, but like off the top of my head, I just think about like AOBA mainly, and maybe, what is it, ABC Builders, is that right? And I don't know what other private interests in housing are organized, but and maybe like none of it will even affect them, but maybe they'll have ideas of what we can do to help incentivize the private market to fit this need.
Realtors, the
Oh, the
realtors.
realtors. Thank you, Andrea. Yeah, I think like all three of them together would be like amazing just to see where their heads are at and how we can partner with them. Would be
So why
really-
don't we talk to the chair of E&T and the subcommittee that handles a lot of that, and maybe we can do a joint hearing on it to invite them in, because yes, it's important information that we're going to need from them, but in the real world, in the scope of work, it's going to be an E&T, and that goes back where the speaker doesn't want us to be stepping on each other's toes. So I think it's important for us to hear it. Maybe we could just do a joint meeting.
That'd be awesome.
Could I add a comment?
Yes, Delegate Chi, sorry. Yes.
Sorry, I was late. But thank you for this important discussion. To Delegate Fisher's point, I think it's really important to understand the market perspectives and how we are going to address this hollowed out mid-range housing options, right? So recently in my district, I went to a groundbreaking and I chatted up with a developer who said, you know, a lot of policymakers don't understand and they push us to build apartment buildings with those 3-bedroom units, when in fact the market just won't support it. Because when a renter with family can rent with at lower cost a single family home or something, an in-law suite, why would he want to be stuck in an apartment with less freedom, with kids running around and dogs and all of that, right? Because of lack of demand. It sounds good on paper, but we're just not going to be able to sustain it and leave it vacant, you know. So I think it's important to understand market perspectives when we do policymaking. But to Delegate Fisher's point, I think it's going to be county by county. Like in Montgomery County, for example, is like being put up as like a national model in preserving and funding affordable housing. We actually leveraged $1 billion of private investment over the past decade by putting in $1 billion from the government through HOA, right? Through HOC to do that. But every county has a different model in how you fund. Like in densely populated areas, government mandates 15% of MPDU, moderately priced dwelling units. And DC has inclusionary zoning kind of policy. But are you willing to look at, like, are you talking about state level policies to supersede county level policies? You know, so housing is really complicated and I don't understand all the moving parts, but I just want to understand how much power we have as state legislators to do something versus what the counties are already doing, right? Is it more of a county level conversation that we need to understand and build upon, or do we want to, you know, supersede certain zoning codes, which is all county level purview? And it's probably more relevant to you because you're running for county. When you can get that done.
I'm so interested, Delegate Chi. No, I understand those lines and I agree with you. I just think like even on the state level bills and where we find those lines, just having the private sector there and their opinions and
Absolutely
would be so helpful. And then I think that'd be a healthy conversation. Like we can, part of our report and reporting can be like, this area that we want to address, we literally cannot as a state delegates, like this is up for counties to do these specific areas. These are the areas we're going to address. So I think you're on the right track, Delegate Chi. So
I'm just throwing out some thoughts that I know, you know, make sure we are on target. Yeah. Thank you.
I think that was very helpful and insightful. So just to recap what we have, and I know we're going to be leaving here soon. Next steps, we're going to try to set up meetings for this committee. One with United Way that includes all the regions. And then a second that will have the Life After Welfare from the University of Maryland and the 2-Gen report recap. So I guess we'll try to do the United Way one earlier in October because we don't know when the 2-Gen report will be out, and target that one for later in October. We will also look at our friends that are on the homeless subgroup. We'll look at inviting us to a meeting when you hear from was it JCEH, was it, that's going to come talk about homelessness that Delegate Fisher was at?
No, JCH is the name of the committee, Joint Committee on Ending
Oh,
Homelessness. That's okay. We had a lot of acronyms. I'll send you our agenda.
the Public Justice Center. Public Justice Center. I got it. Public Justice Center. Right.
I'm going to
Yeah.
send you our agendas, and I know we sent them up through December, and we're doing a lot of housing testimony. So I'll send them to you. Okay.
Okay. And so we'll look at that. And then I think the other action was that we would talk to ENT and their subcommittee that deals with housing about possibly having the public sector in for some sort of hearing, and that maybe we could attend that. Did I capture that correctly?
So let me just mention that ENT actually did have a hearing maybe about a month ago on housing. It was a 5-hour meeting. 5 hours. And so, it'd be interesting to hear what Chair Barbe would have to say with that. And we did have individuals from the private sector, and they were the last presenters. And so by that time, I don't know, most people probably were meetinged out by that time, but it would be interesting to hear what he may have to say. That one, could be a little bit more challenging to schedule, but the chair would have he would be able to tell you that. Okay. But understanding that what it is that we're talking about, and trying to hopefully set some policy or some legislation around, I'm sure that he'll be helpful.
Okay, sounds good. And we would only be interested in the private sector piece. That's my understanding. Is that correct, Delegate Fisher? Just the private sector piece of it is all we would be interested in. Okay, so we don't need the full 5 hours is what I'm saying.
Hallelujah. I mean, I didn't mute myself. I'm sorry.
I think that's all I have for us today. Any other last comments for anyone else before we adjourn?
I really like Delegate McKay's background, and I think that perhaps we should consider having one of our meetings there.
Sure, State Park, Delegate. It's all the Delegate State Park.
Road trip.
Anyone else? I want to really thank our staff, Grace and Emily, for all of your support. And so
absolutely.
And we'll be working with them to.
So you're going to send out the next meetings, right, Delegate?
Yeah, so we're going to work with them to try to help, help us with getting some of the folks and scheduling these, correct?
All right, motion to adjourn then, Madam Chair.
Second.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Back to the park, Delegate.
All right. We'll see each other next time we look at each other.